Thank you. I'm Janice Hagan. I am with the New Democratic Party, the NDP. I work at Seneca College for the last 32 years. I provide learning supports for students with language barriers, learning disabilities, and other problems. So it's a lovely job. I'm working with young people all the time, working with young people trying to help them get jobs. So I have a lot of knowledge about that area. I'm also the president of the local union at Seneca. So I represent 2,600 people who vote for me for 30 years. And I am now representing 1,200 people because we've lost a lot of jobs due to COVID. So I've had to help a lot of people with layoffs and a lot of hardship. And I'm good at that. I'm good at resolving problems. I'm actually good at keeping people positive and hopeful and trying to do their best. I'm not a left-wing radical. I am left-wing, but I believe in working with other groups. So I sat on the York Region South Simcoe Training and Adjustment Board from before it started for 10 years into it. I did a lot of work with businesses in Richmond Hill and York Region. We got a lot involved in bringing young women and young people into trades, technology, precision skills jobs. So I know a lot about what jobs are available in Richmond Hill, where we have shortages in staff and have to bring people in from Europe and other countries. And I know where we need to put some work. I'm also an environmentalist. I have a master's degree in environmental studies from York University, where I looked at a lot on climate change policy and social change, because we have to do a lot of social change in the next 10 years. This will be an important decade for turning back climate change. So I look forward to your questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Janice. The next candidate is Leah Taylor-Roy from the Liberal Party of Canada. Leah?
Thank you, Rod. And thank you, Monique, and all of the event partners for hosting this event. Good evening, bienvenue et merci au Board of Trade et vous tous qui nous rejoignez ici ce soir sur Zoom. I'm speaking to you today from my home in south part of Aurora, which is the traditional territory of the Anishinaabe people, the Williams Treaties and Treaty 13 area. I wish to recognize the long history of First Nations and Métis people in Ontario and show respect to them today. I could give you a lot of background about myself, but instead I really want to go to talking about this election. I believe this is an incredibly important election for all of us. And this is really about the future of our country and the kind of Canada we want. Frankly, I think it's one of the most important elections we've had. And I urge every concerned voter to vote for the Liberal Party. The Liberal Party has taken clear decisions and bold action on issues that are of great concern to us today, ending the COVID pandemic through a clear policy on vaccines and vaccine mandates. While the Conservative Party hasn't even asked their candidates to be vaccinated. We have banned semi-automatic assault rifles. The Conservative Party today is saying they want to review those rifles to see the semi-automatic weapons, to see which ones should be allowed. I can tell you very clearly that in the Liberal Party, there is no place for any of those weapons in our society. If you're like me, the most important issue, quite frankly, in my mind is climate change. And the Liberal Party has by far the best and most actionable plan. So if you're like me and you care about these issues, please put your concern for the environment first. My name's Leah Taylor-Roy, and I stand for strong local representation and clear, decisive action to move forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Leah. The next candidate to introduce themselves is Leona Alaslav from the Conservative Party of Canada. Leona?
Hi, I'm Leona Alaslav, and I'm the Conservative candidate for Aurora Oak Ridge's Richmond Hill. I was a former logistics officer, and service to country is who I am at my core. At IBM, I managed complex technology projects for companies around the world, and I saw firsthand that innovation and competitiveness are critical to maintaining Canada's economic prosperity. At Bombardier Aerospace, I led advanced manufacturing projects that built some of the world's most incredible corporate aircraft, and I know that domestic manufacturing is important to ensuring good quality jobs. And for over 15 years, my husband and I owned and operated a canoe outfitting business in Northern Ontario. Small businesses are the backbone of every community, and I know how hard it is to operate a business in tough times, particularly has it been over COVID. I've had the privilege of living all over Canada, but my husband and I 15 years ago chose Oak Ridges as our home. Canada is at a tipping point. The world has changed and we must change with it. We live in a great country, but COVID has shown us that there are a lot of things that aren't working the way that we need them to do, and we have a significant amount of work to do. Over the last 6 years, I have been your member of parliament. I have served as deputy leader of Her Majesty's Loyal Opposition. I've served on Defense Committee, Citizenship and Immigration, Canada-US, Canada-China. I know what it takes to not only have good ideas, but to govern the country as well. And that's why I'm asking for your support to continue to serve you as your member of parliament so that together we can secure Canada's future. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Leona. And the last candidate to introduce himself is Anthony Siskos from the People's Party of Canada. Anthony?
Hi, everyone. Thank you for having me this evening, Aurora. Sorry, Richmond Hill. Last night was Aurora. But yes, thank you for having me this evening. I am with the PPC, but I am your true conservative candidate in this election. And funny enough, I actually agree with Leah right now. This is the most decisive election and fundamental election in Canadian history. In Canadian history, there has been not an election in our past that has been this monumental, because we are talking ideals that relic and ring communism from our main candidate, Leah, who runs for the Liberal Party of Canada. Confused myself there, but here we are today working together, and you'll see kind of the candidates give odd faces as they talk. If you want to learn more about me as a candidate, I'm a great guy. I have a business. I have a great career. I've not wanted to be in politics at all, but here I am in politics with you lovely folks. And I'm sure everyone is well intended on this call, but the road that we're leading down is disastrous, and it's time to have real change in Canada. And I'm real change. I'm looking at this government as complete waste as far as where we've been spending our money these past years. And we'll get into the deficit, but is this the Canada we want to live in? Is this the big bureaucratic government that we want to look to? Can we not put responsibility back into our own hands? Are you not a Canadian citizen and proud to live here? Because I am. I am very proud to be Canadian. And the rhetoric that you're going to hear on this call, these people are not proud to be here, and I am, and I will support you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Anthony. We're now going to move to the question period where the panelists will ask questions, and each candidate has a rotating opportunity to answer first, second, third, or fourth. I will remind the candidates to keep the conversation professional, and we'll move forward with, again, just for the audience's benefit, just let you know that we did sort of draw random names to pick the order earlier in the evening. The first question is coming from Glenn Waugh, and Glenn is going to address the question. The first opportunity to answer is Leah Taylor-Roy. Glenn?
Yeah, the first question is a generic question, but an important question to a lot of people. What is it about yourself, not your party, but about yourself, that makes you a good candidate?
It's one second too. I apologize. It's actually Leona that was drawn named first. So Leona is asking first, and then just so people know, the order is going to be Leah, and then Janice, and then Anthony, and it will rotate in terms of who goes first. Leona, Leah, Janice, Anthony. So Leona, thank you.
Well, thank you very much for that question. And I think it's a very important question, particularly since we just heard from the People's Party of Canada to indicate that we as candidates in a federal election are for some reason not proud to be Canadians. I was an Air Force officer for 10 years. I swore an oath to serve and defend the values of this country and all that it represents. I am incredibly proud and honored of this country and the democracy that we have that allows us to have an open, fair, and balanced election, and candidates with differing perspectives on how to shape the future of the nation, but shape it together nonetheless. So commitment to country, personal characteristics, wisdom, experience, and balance in the dialogue are the key things that I think I bring to the table as a candidate in this federal election. Thank you.
Thank you, Leona. And Leah is the next candidate to answer.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Glenn, for that question. I think it is an important question. And I think one of the things that I'm running on is really local representation. I was raised in a family where community service, serving the people, was really the highest calling. My father was mayor, my brother is mayor now in Newmarket. And really, I'm running because I feel we've lost our way as members of parliament and that we no longer put our people, our constituents first. Certainly the work we do in Ottawa is important, but our primary responsibility and our primary job is to represent people here, to be responsive, to hear what people have to say, and to have those important conversations so that we know what our constituents want, so we know what we need in our communities. And I've worked very hard to reach out to every community within this riding to make sure that I've been in contact with people and listening to them. And I believe that I have the business experience, the not-for-profit experience, and the life experience to be a great member of parliament for you. And it would be my honor to represent you.
Thank you very much, Leah. The next candidate, as previously mentioned, is Janice.
Thanks. I bring 30 years experience trying to help real people with real problems in the real world, right? So I'm not dogmatic. I'm not going to sell you the party. I'm going to make sure that the population I'm representing understands the issues without spin, and I'm going to seek their input and we will make a decision together. I think that's what representative democracy, that's how you run. And I do think you need to vote for a person, not just a party, you know, because we're sending people that need to have good ideas to Ottawa to try and work with other parties, because it'll probably be another minority government. And we need to have people who are willing to work together to find consensus, not to just, you know, shut down the conversation and the debate if they don't get their own way.
Thank you, Janice. And Anthony.
Thank you for that question. I really appreciate it. Everyone listening, my number is 416-846-4669. And take it down because today I answered 50 calls and talked to every one of my constituents who had a concern. That's the type of candidate I will be. Call me at any time. My email is siskosantony@gmail.com. I am here for you. You tell me what to do. That's not the other way around. That's what we've been seeing. And I'm here to restore the order to government. Call me anytime. That's why I'm your candidate. Thank you.
Thank you, Anthony. The next question is being asked by Yo-Yo Yan of the Liberal. And Yo-Yo, you will direct your question first to, or the first opportunity to answer will be Leah in this round.
Thank you. So many Canadians don't actually engage in or care about politics, but our country is better when governments address the needs of all Canadians, including women, young people, Indigenous Canadians, new Canadians, and people with disabilities. How would your party push forward the democratic reform to encourage greater engagement in the democratic process and include more underrepresented groups? Thank you.
Okay, so first to respond, Leah.
Thank you for that question, Yo-Yo. I think it's incredibly important. As you know, the Liberal government, our Liberal government under Trudeau is one of the first that has required every riding to try and find candidates from diverse groups, including women. We have the first gender balanced cabinet. We are the party of inclusivity. And I think it's up to all of us, everyone in government, to really work with, as allies, with all the groups in our area. As I said, I've reached out and I've worked with so many groups in this riding. And I think that engaging people in the democratic process, as I was saying, by having those conversations, by being sure that people know they can reach out and talk to us, will help people to feel more included. I also think that changes need to be made in the House of Parliament, quite frankly. I think that the divisive and horrible conduct that we've seen in the House has not been conducive to encouraging other people to join. And I think there has to be an end to that and a greater civility in our society.
Thank you, Leah. And Janice.
Hi, this is the first election after the recovery, of many bodies of young children and young adults from Indigenous communities who were taken to residential schools and never came home. And what that did to 7 generations, it was 7 generations of Indigenous people, is going to take us probably 7 generations to heal if we start. And so we have to implement all the recommendations from the Truth and Reconciliation process, as well as Jordan's principles. We have to put Indigenous people on the most important tables where environmental decisions are being made. We need to respect the land that we have taken, and we have to make amends. And we can't really talk about human rights in other countries until we deal with this issue and deal with our own guilt. We also have to deal with racism. We have to confront it face on and make the changes that we need to make in our policing and in our communities.
Thank you, Janice. Anthony.
Hi, everyone. As part of the People's Party of Canada, we don't believe in mandates. We don't believe in mandating, social justice from any perspective. We believe in the free markets and everyone, the equality of opportunity. So long as I can participate in this forum right now, speaking as a gay man myself, I don't feel as though I am in need of any sort of government regulation to tell me what to do. So from the People's Party of Canada's perspective, we believe in no mandates. Our party right now is the most diverse party, from just regular Canadians here and there joining and having a collective message of freedom, self-reliance, and responsibility. And I welcome everyone on this call to join us.
Thank you, Anthony. The next candidate to answer is Leona.
Thank you very much. This is also a very important question from the perspective that democracy is fragile. We are at risk of losing it if we take it for granted. That's why we have to ask ourselves, why do people feel like they're not engaged? Because they've lost trust and confidence in governing and in the people who are in government. So the first and foremost thing that we need to do is regain that trust. They feel like they can't trust what we say, that we don't follow through, that there's no accountability, that they're not being listened to, that the services government is entrusted to deliver are not being delivered. That's what needs to change. And with that, the dialogue. And we can't talk to each other the way that we are, to separate and find all the ways that divide us rather than all the ways that unite us. One country, one Canada, united together. Thank you,
Leona. The next question is being asked by panelist Ben Leung, and Ben, the first candidate to answer will be Janice. So Ben, your question.
As a small business owner and also representing my association, there's a lot of small business owner. During the pandemic, the current government has introduced a lot of programs to help the Canadians. And some of them are good, some of them are not that great. So if you are elected, I would like to see what kind of new program you introduce to helping the small business to recover in the 2022?
Thank you, Ben. Janice?
Hi, NDP fought very hard in the minority government to push for the CERB, to push for it to be extended. We were all waiting. As I said, I represent a lot of people laid off, and we were all waiting to like a week before to find out if there would actually be a check coming up for people. So yeah, we definitely are going to continue those programs. You need to have money in the hands of people in the community, not people wandering around the sidewalk with no place to live, in order for business to thrive. The economy has to move. So yeah, we're going to continue wage and rent subsidies for small businesses to help them get through this very unusual rough patch. This is a global crisis. It's not a time to start talking about restraints. We also want to do hiring bonuses to help businesses bring back some of the employees that have lost their jobs, and put caps on credit card fees for business, starting to deal with the problem of the banks taking so much money from small business.
Thank you, Janice. Next up is Anthony.
Hi to all entrepreneurs on the call. Like yourself, I will be running to end the program that is lockdowns. And that can't be said from any other candidate, really, because they're beholden to the greater power that is this big pharma that keeps on implementing lockdowns for us in this nonsensical world that we're currently living in. The program that I will be ending is CERB. People on this call, entrepreneurs like myself, they just want to run their business now. Safely, of course. Who doesn't? I do, don't you? The programs that we also be ending are any sort of vax passports, because we don't want you in a lawsuit, because that's what's going to happen. Under the conservative and liberals, you guys will be receiving lawsuits in the coming weeks, because this is currently discrimination. And we're the only party that stands against discrimination. Thank you.
Thank you, Anthony. The next candidate to answer is Leona.
Thank you very much. Small businesses are the backbone of our economy. I know exactly how difficult it can be in tough times, but many of the things that small businesses are facing were cracks in our foundations long before COVID. So some of these big things, like comprehensive tax reform, like understanding and leveling the playing field for our domestic manufacturing, making sure that other countries meet the same incredibly high standards for environment and health and safety, and therefore are able to compete on the same playing field, is what is going to make the difference for small businesses in the future. We also are going to invest in Main Street businesses loans by giving loans up to $200,000, and we're going to rebuild Main Street with a tax credit, giving 25% tax credit on amounts up to $100,000 that individual Canadians invest in Main Street. We have a comprehensive program for small business because we need them to be in an economic recovery. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Leona. Leah?
Yes, thank you very much for that question, Ben. I think the first thing we have to do is end this pandemic. And as we and all countries around the world know, the best way to do this and to prevent lockdowns is to make sure everyone gets their vaccines. And that is one thing that the Liberal government has been very sure of, that this is the route we need to go. And we are continuing to ensure that all Canadians have access to vaccines and that people get those vaccines so that our small businesses can get back to work. Because when people are afraid for their health, they're not going to be out shopping. They're not going to be out walking on our main streets. But in addition to that, our government has had the back of Canadians and our small businesses all through this. And we are now pivoting. We're not going to end relief, though, because it's very important still. We have the wage subsidy program that's continuing, and we've added other programs to help small businesses. Unlike the Conservatives, we don't think it's time to wind down relief to businesses. We think we have to keep helping them at this point.
Thank you, Leah. The next question is going to be asked by Cheryl Guinness, and Cheryl, Anthony will have the first opportunity to answer. Cheryl, you have to unmute yourself, please.
My apologies. Thank you everyone for joining us. My question will be on housing. One of the most significant barriers to building new housing supply are the local and provincial regulations and red tape. If elected, how will you, your government, work with the provincial, territorial, and municipal government to address these barriers to new housing supply?
Thank you, Cheryl, for your question. Very important question. As a millennial myself, I was fortunate enough to buy a home, and I count my blessings every day. That can't be said for a lot of millennials right now, currently, who are being disenfranchised from home ownership. This is a supply issue. This is nothing but a supply issue, and the PPC will work collectively with local, municipal governments to ensure that we have common sense solutions to environmental red tape and bureaucracy that's currently being holding developers back. We're not in the business of destroying properties. We're not in the business of ruining the environment. We're in the business of not letting developers take 12 years to develop a new subdivision. This is absurd. We just want to live. We want to have homes, just like people in the boomer generation. We too want homes. Thank you.
Thank you, Anthony. The next candidate is Leona.
There's no question that there is a housing crisis. We have the lowest number of houses per capita in the G7. We're the second largest country in the world, and yet we have the fewest number of houses per capita. We need to do something about that because that's part of how people feel that they have a stable and good life. Conservative government will focus on building 1 million homes in the next 3 years. And we have to look at what the federal government can do. What the federal government can do is work with municipalities to encourage them to invest in high density housing, particularly near public transit. We want to look at how we can change environmental practices and build more sustainable housing. And we want to encourage greater supply in the rental market so that there's a balance between all the types of housing and that there's simply more of it. We also need to look at money laundering because that is also having an impact of foreign owners with illegal money using the supply. Thank you.
Yeah, try to keep to your minute, please. You'll see the stop sign come up. We'll try to help you if need be. Leah is the next to answer.
Thank you very much. That's an important question. Like everyone, I agree there is a housing crisis. And I think that there is too much red tape right now, but I also believe that we have to protect our environment. So there is a balance that's required. It's going to be very important for us to work together across all levels of government on many issues, including our environment and housing, to make sure that we can move ahead efficiently. The Liberal Party has done many things, including the first national housing strategy. We understand that housing is a basic right and that affordability is an issue in our riding. And one of the things that I would say is that the ability to save and put away money tax-free for our first housing will be very important. And we've created that account, the first homeowners bought for first homeowners. So I think we have a number of programs, including increasing supply, and the CMHC is funding purpose-built rental housing, which is also incredibly important. Thank you.
Thank you, Leah. And Janice.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I think that red tape is a fancy way of saying environmental regulations, and we have Oak Ridge's moraine here. It is so important. I actually taught David Tabushi what a kettle lake was. This is where and they saved the Oak Ridge's moraine. So if you think running for politics in a tough riding where you don't have a chance is a waste of time, I'll tell you it is not. So we need to save the Oak Ridge's moraine. We have just won a huge fight in court with Greenpeace to tear down some of the Doug Ford rules from the Conservatives, which were trying to remove red tape and allow more building. We have 100 years of insects left. I know a lot of people don't like insects, but if we stop pollinating the food, what are we going to eat? Okay, so that is not the problem. The problem is that the government got out of the housing business. So we are going to get back into the housing business and build affordable housing. Stop the outrageous markup of flipping houses that is increasing, like it's like the stock market now. Instead of buying a home for your family, that's what needs to be fixed.
Thank you, Janice. The next question is asked from Glenn Waugh, representing the Rotary of Richmond Hill. And Glenn, the first candidate that will be answering is Leona, just so you're aware. Glenn.
Okay, a change of topic here, foreign affairs. As everyone knows, we have at the present time a very poor relationship with China, and there are reasons for this. But overall, what do you feel Canada's place on the world stage should be, and how would your party propose achieving this?
Leona?
The world has changed and Canada must change with it. We are seeing a rise of great powers once again, and we're going to have to decide as a middle power exactly how we're going to play in this new world. It's a very important question. And unfortunately, over the last 6 years, Canada has never been more alone. We have the two Michaels that are still wrongfully imprisoned, and nothing has been done about it. We need to refocus on standing with our allies and against those who don't share our values of human rights and international law. We need to work with other middle powers so that we can economically and from a defense and security and politically work together to ensure that we can make a much more peaceful environment, but a much more stable and secure world. Thank you.
Thank you, Leona. Leah.
Thank you. Yes, we have been working very closely with our allies. I'm not sure where Leona was, but we've signed an agreement with our allies against arbitrary detention. We've been working hard, and it's been a priority of our government to get the two Michaels home. We are a middle power, and we don't get anywhere by beating our chest and yelling. We get somewhere by working with allies. We have signed more trade agreements. We have been stronger in our alliances than we ever have been. And I think when you look at our relationship with the United States now with Biden, it's extremely good. So I think we have to continue doing that, quite frankly. We are a medium power, and we've always played an important role in many things, including the North-South dialogue, including international affairs and international development. And I think Canada is a respected member of this world. There are challenges, but I think we're ready to face them with our allies.
Thank you, Leah. And Janice.
I've had the pleasure of working with international students for the last 20 years, closely getting to know them, students from Afghanistan, Pakistan, Iran, all over the world. And, you know, it's really hard when you get to know people and you get them together, talking to each other. It's really hard to be nationalist. You have to, I mean, this is about peace. The world has to work together, or we're not going to be able to solve the problems that we all have to do. So I understand, you know, that we want China to deal with its coal issues and to make steps, but we're not going to wait for that. Okay, so Leona, I know that Conservatives are often saying we don't want to make cuts in Canada to our emissions until China does their share. We have to acknowledge that we're in a very privileged country with great industrialization, and we have to work with the rest of the world, or else they're not going to cooperate. Nobody's going to stop China from burning all that coal. We can't do that with a war. So we do have to find ways to work together, and part of that is I'm sorry, I'm running out of time.
Thank you, Janice. And Anthony.
Hi, everyone. I think that Canada is a world power, and we should be very proud of what we've accomplished over the past 200 years. And this is a great question. I'm proud to be Canadian. I don't know about everyone else, but I am. And so what I look for in a Canada of tomorrow is a pro-business Canada, a Canada where these nations can come here, be friendly to do business, because that's how we make peace with one another. It's not about relations. It's not a relations on how China can manage themselves. We can manage ourselves. At the end of the day, we have a governing body, the UN, who can take care of these international relations, which we should uphold, for human rights, which I uphold. But at the end of the day, Canada is a pro-business nation where we invite all countries to come and invest in our people, the brightest people in the world, the smartest, the most loving. And that's the Canada I see for us.
Thank you, Anthony. The next question is going to be asked from Yo-Yo Yan from the Liberal and York Region.com. So Yo-Yo.
Thank you, Rod. So again, topic change, climate change a little bit. We've seen increasing wildfire and flooding activity and extended heat waves in Canada in recent years as the effects of climate change become more and more apparent, which could be devastating to the agriculture industry in our York region as well. So what are your party's primary strategies to combat climate change? Thank you.
The first candidate to answer is Leah Taylor-Roy from the Liberal Party. Leah?
Thank you for that question, Yo-Yo. I agree. The climate crisis and our environment, it's the biggest challenge facing us right now. And we need to do more for agriculture. As we saw during the pandemic, we need to be more self-sufficient. And I think the primary thing the Liberal Party has done is put in place the price on pollution, which every party now agrees with, but we're doing it in a more aggressive way that's really going to help change behavior. We've also made sure that the average Canadian is not paying out of pocket by putting in place the Climate Action Incentive Plan. So people get a rebate, a refund with their tax return to compensate for the extra money they're paying. But it does change behavior. And these market mechanisms are the most important way for us to do that. We're going to move forward with it. We're not going to stick with $50 a ton like the Conservatives are suggesting and think that's going to make a change. It's not going to make the change we need. We have to take more aggressive action on the climate crisis. That is one way. Banning plastics is another way. Regenerative agriculture. That's very important. And we're working with that and planting trees. And time is up. I could talk a long time about climate. Thank you.
Thank you, Leah. The next question is being answered by, the next candidate to answer is Janice Hagan from the New Democratic Party. Janice?
I think everybody's got to get outside and you got to get to know your ecosystem, your biome, your environment, plant some things, watch it. If you don't own land, you can plant alongside a highway, sidewalks. There's all kinds of programs out there and we can change this. I have seen Great Lakes changed. I grew up near Lake Erie. In the most ecological diverse part of Canada. And it is all related. I mean, climate change is about lowering emissions. What we would do different is bring in the targets sooner and faster. You have to have short-term targets, not just long-term targets like St. Augustine, God make me chaste, but not yet, right? I think that has mostly been our attitude to the environment and it has to change. I'm sorry. No more pipelines. I'm sorry. The Liberals, we've got to stop that. We've got to stop giving subsidies to large oil companies to do Arctic research. I mean, save that money. Let's put it into affordable housing. I just watched the Bob Nye documentary on Netflix. Watch it. We have the ability to do green power now if we want it.
Thank you, Janice. The next candidate is Anthony Ciscos from the People's Party of Canada. Anthony?
So, everyone wants to live in a great environment. Everyone wants to live in a healthy environment. Everyone wants to live in a country that is beautiful. Why don't we? That's absurd to think otherwise. But to think that we cannot rely on things like oil that Janice just brought up, where we're talking through our computers, I'm coming from a common sense solution here. I want to plant trees. I planted trees. I planted trees this week. I'll show you my backyard. There is no way to get around what these big oil companies have in store for us. Canada needs to be energy efficient, number one. That comes with the pipelines. Sorry, Janice, pipelines are necessary for now. Maybe in 30 years, we're working towards it. We got to let the private sector build us towards that and let the people compete on that. But to this point, we love the environment for everyone to invest in and of themselves and not let the government tell us how many trees to plant, what lakes to clean, and where we should be doing these things, because I can do it myself. Thank you.
Thank you, Anthony. The next candidate to answer is Leona Alaslav from the Conservative Party of Canada. Leona.
Thank you. Protecting the environment has always been a core Conservative value. Climate change is real, and as Canadians, we must do our part to reduce greenhouse gas emissions and contribute to sound environmental stewardship. We're all committed to building a greener future for our children. The Conservative plan will reduce carbon emissions both from consumers and industrial emitters. It will also reward Canadian industry for meeting the highest environmental standards in the world and encourage other countries to do the same by imposing a carbon border tariff on goods imported from major polluters like China. Climate change is a global issue that requires a global approach. Oil and gas meets the highest environmental regulations and standards in the world. And despite being the world's 6th largest oil producing nation, Canadians get 44% of their supply from foreign producers rather than domestic. Canada's continued import of oil and gas from countries that have higher, significantly lower environmental standards than ours is not good for Canada or the world. Thank you.
So before we move on to the next question, I just wanted to remind people that Jason at cherniaklaw.com, in the chat, you will see the email address as well as under Jason's smiling face somewhere in the middle of your screen in the panel. Please send your questions, make them general, not targeted to one candidate. Every candidate wants an opportunity on an issue. And as just a general reminder, please send some questions. You have about 20-25 more minutes before he'll forward them to me for the public questions from the floor. Next question.
Mr. Moderator, could we also remind people to go on mute when they're not speaking? Thank you.
That would be good. It was myself speaking over you at the end there, Leona. I haven't picked up anyone else, but that's a good point as well. Panelists, please mute in between your opportunities. So the next question comes from the Markham and Richmond Hill Vaughan Chinese Business Association panelist, Ben Leung. Ben?
Hi, everybody knew that during the pandemic, much money has been spent, and our national debt will reach 1.4 trillion very soon. So, but during the campaign, not that many parties leaders had addressed how to balance the budget or when. And in your party, do you have any idea how to balance this budget and when and how? And also how to expand the collection base on our revenue to balance our budget?
Thank you, Ben. The first candidate to answer that question is Janice Hagan.
I think the fastest way to bring down the budget is, one, to get people all back working again. That's extremely important. You're not going to balance the budget with, homeless people. We have to have people in jobs and the economy's moving, and we have to have small businesses staying open and expanding. That's how the economy grows. We also need to adjust our tax system because, frankly, it's been decade after decade of conservative and liberal tax cuts to corporations that used to have to pay their fair share in this country. And I'm not talking about small businesses that are barely making it, making even. I'm talking about people who build rocket ships, their own personal rocket ships to go into the moon and then thank all their customers and their employees for working for minimum wage so that they could afford that. So we do need to change our tax system. We also need to start preparing for the climate change crisis that we have coming up so that we're not constantly in crisis mode paying for big storms and big problems. We got to put the money in now to prevent that.
Thank you, Janice. Anthony Siskos.
Yeah, so Janice referred to Amazon when she's talking about the rocket ship. And if it wasn't for companies like Amazon, these people wouldn't have jobs. They just wouldn't. These companies and these people invest their livelihoods and risk it all to create companies so that us can work together for these great innovations. That's how the market works. That's how the free market works. And you know who's not creating a free market? Both the Liberals and Conservatives. Let's go through the debt right now that Justin Trudeau just implemented on all of us Canadians that we're going to pay through and not be able to afford housing forever. $659 billion. compared to every other prime minister in the past, $634 billion in debt. Where do you think that's going to lead, folks? Nowhere good, fast. So we're the only responsible party that will reel in this deficit because it's enough. Thank you.
Thank you, Anthony. Leona Alaslav.
Well, thank you very much. We need to work on addressing the deficit and absolutely the debt. The way we do that, though, is by getting more people back to work, by comprehensive tax reform, by investing in the long term, targeted stimulus around infrastructure, public transit, digital infrastructure. We need to look at domestic manufacturing, innovation, research and development, the things that Canada used to be a world leader in, we must once again be. And we can do that, and that will increase bring people back to Canada, jobs back to Canada, higher paying capabilities, and that will in turn reduce the debt and the deficit. Thank you.
Thank you, Leona. Leah Taylor-Roy.
Thank you very much. Another great question, Ben. Yes, we have indeed spent a lot of money during COVID because our government has had the backs of Canadians. We have gone into debt so that the average Canadian who couldn't afford to go into debt didn't have to. This has been the biggest economic recession since the Great Depression. So it stands to reason that our national debt is higher. But we do have to address it, and we will, and we are. We're addressing it by putting taxes on excess profits that were earned by banks and insurance companies. We're doing it by closing loopholes. We are doing it by making strategic investments in our economies so that women can go back to work. 12 times as many women as men had to leave the labor force during this pandemic. We have one of the best childcare programs that has ever been introduced, and the Conservative government has said they'd rip it up. We need to make sure that we make strategic investments that are going to help grow our economy and move all Canadians forward.
Thank you, Leah. The next question is, the next panelist asking a question is Cheryl Guinness. And Cheryl, Anthony will have the first opportunity to ask. Cheryl? Cheryl, you'll have to unmute yourself.
I just love speaking so nobody can hear me. Okay, my next question will be on cybersecurity. Cybercrime is rising rapidly across the globe, and Canada is not immune from these attacks. Our infrastructure, major corporations, and citizens are being attacked by these criminals daily. What is the plan to protect our society as the crimes continue to grow in huge numbers?
Very good question, Cheryl. I actually had personal experience with my corporation, which was terrifying. Watch us be infiltrated from some fake invoice that got in, and then we had to, revert, change all the passwords. It was a very big learning experience for myself. So extrapolate that across the country is quite exhausting feat, as I can imagine. But this is the number one importance in our time, the very number one importance. We need to double down on what a secure Canadian future looks like, but also have contingencies in the background. Yesterday, a good topic that was brought up was a cashless society. Something like a threat like this, if for whatever reason, we need to make sure that Canadians don't descend into some apocalyptic state. So removing cash under the Liberal agenda is not the case, but the PPC will double down on privacy, security, and ensuring that we are the safest, most intellectual AI-driven country there is. Thanks.
Leona is next.
There's no question that cybersecurity is an incredible threat. Everything from the theft of intellectual property, from the influencing of our media and the things that we are presented with from an information perspective, to actual theft where money is being stolen and leaving the country, not to mention our identity. We have to do something about it. I was privileged enough to be a member of the National Security and Intelligence Committee of Parliamentarians, where we were looking at how we rank and how our citizens understand this threat. the first and foremost thing that we need to do is communicate with Canadians who perhaps don't realize just how much we are at risk from this. And then as a government, we need to do more to ensure that we have digital infrastructure that is secure and sovereign in our communications network, that we control our information and our data. Thank you.
Thank you, Leona. Leah?
Thank you very much. And this is a very big threat to our country. And this is one area we're working with our allies. This is something that we have to do in cooperation with NORAD, with the G7, with NATO, and like-minded partners to address this because it's not just a threat internally, it's a global threat. I just want to say to everyone, I'm very sorry that I have to leave the debate now. My email is leah@supportleah.ca. If you would like answers to any of the other questions, please send them to me. But I had a large community event planned before this debate was, and I had to make a choice to try and balance both. So thank you again to everyone for hosting this tonight. It's been a pleasure to be here and to listen to questions and other responses. And I look forward to seeing everyone again at the next debate. Good night. Bye.
Thank you for your participation, Leah. And the next answer is from Janice.
I think, for an issue like this that involves so many people, we need to get the stakeholders together in a room, and we need to see what Canada has to lose and what Canada has to gain before we start working internationally with other countries to make international rules. It's definitely a serious issue. It's expanded. I would expand the issue to talk about businesses that are doing business in Canada, like Google, like Wikipedia, groups that Netflix, making sure that they are using Canadian content, the same, like not just breaking Canadian rules for broadcasting, paying taxes fairly. So you're starting to see other countries come up with taxes for Facebook ads and that kind of thing. And I think we have to work again internationally. It's an entirely new world. And I think, with the election in the States and probably the election in Canada, the fake news, especially around the vaccine policies, it's just driving me crazy because I'm representing members that have to be vaccinated and fighting grievances. But,
Janice.
The anti-science internet has to be shut down. Thank you.
Yeah, I will speak over you. I give you a little leeway.
That's
If
right.
it looks like you're still you don't see it, then I will kind of speak over you a bit. Next question comes from the Rotary Richmond Hill, Glenwa.
Yeah, this question has been partially answered and touched upon, but among the businessmen and Rotarians and so forth, the most questions I'm getting have to do with the deficit and debt and government spending. And basically they're saying, spend, spend, spend. How will your party manage the huge debt that's being built up, along with the campaign promises of more and more spending? And how are we going to get out of this hole? And so you hear about getting people back to work and this sort of thing, but it's a serious thing in a lot of businessmen's minds that we have created such a huge debt. We understand the COVID situation and so forth, but promises have been made to spend billions and billions of dollars more during the campaign. And as you know, we touched on the changing climate and the things that can happen there. So the big concern is, do we have really any party that has a practical plan that's going to work to reduce this huge debt that we built up?
Okay, so specifically on how we can retract the debt. And the first up to answer is Leona Alaslav.
Thank you. I think you're incredibly right, but there are two different kinds of spending. There's spending where it is for consumers to use immediately, and then there's spending where you're investing in strategic qualities in a nation that will generate revenue over the long term. What we're talking about spending in is infrastructure, digital infrastructure, domestic and manufacturing, labor and industry to get people back to work. Those are things that are going to generate revenue, as opposed to programs where it's, yes, an emergency to get them through the time, but not what will deliver in the long term. We are going to have to prioritize, and we're going to have a government that has the courage to do so. And I know that the Conservatives have the courage to make the tough decisions in the best interest of the nation and all Canadians. Thank you.
Thank you, Leona. Janice Hagan.
I think we've had this question. I think we've seen during CERB that a guaranteed minimum livable amount of money for everyone in the community, all adults in the community, keeps business going, keeps the economy moving, and keeps revolutions off the street, because revolutions are not started by political ideologues. They're started by women who cannot feed their children. Okay, so we can't just have a harsh, cruel world where we're not taking care of the most vulnerable people in our societies, and we can't give them just enough to have housing and food, because nobody will be spending any money in businesses. I mean, I've 30 years as a public servant, I'm not on the low end of the income scale, and I am already at the point where after bills and housing and food for my family, because food has gone up a lot lately, I don't have enough to get by. So I think we need to keep those steps in place to keep businesses going, to get jobs back, so that we can bring down the deficit in the long term.
Thank you, Janice. Anthony.
This is a loaded question, Glenn, so I'm going to be as concise and clear as possible. We are the only party, take this back to the Rotary Club, we're the only party that will be able to deal with this with a comprehensive plan, the PPC, right here. Take it back to them right now, because we are very serious. Like in my other answer to, I believe, Cheryl, these are the points. We're going to stop taking billions of dollars from the private sector and redistributing through unfair subsidies to favor certain sectors of the market immediately. We're going to cut the corporate tax down from 15% down to 10% and increase salaries for investment. We also want to eventually, once we pay down this ridiculous debt, where companies can't even operate anymore, they're going to be enslaved to this government, cut income tax so people can redistribute their money themselves and choose for themselves where to invest that money. Because right now, government, the word is squander, Glenn. Glenn, the word is squandered with our futures. Thank you.
Thank you, Anthony. The next question is coming from the Richmond Hill Liberal, Yo-Yo Yan. Yo-Yo?
Thank you. So it's a question about social safety net. Some critics say that the CERB and EI programs during the pandemic by the current government were overly generous and fiscally irresponsible. Could you comment on that issue, and what's your plan to build a better social safety net? Thank you.
The first up to answer is Janice Hagan.
I think the social safety net is what makes Canada different from the States. And I think during COVID, you can see a big difference between having a business in America and having a business in Canada and living in both countries. You know, we need a strong social safety net. We want to bring in Medicare. The government's already paying for drugs for all the seniors, young people, people on social assistance, people with disabilities, all the employees of cities, provinces, and the nation. Bringing in the rest, which is a small portion, you know, and then adding the ability to negotiate against large pharmaceutical companies for the same prices, say, that Brazil and other countries get to pay. I mean, that would save us money. So we need that. We need dental. We need psychological medical help available to everyone, not just those who can afford it. That's the kind of social safety nets that we want to bring in to make more jobs, to make our communities stronger.
Thank you, Janice. Anthony?
Hi, this is a very loaded question, Yo-Yo, so I'm going to try to hit on all the points. At the beginning of the pandemic, terrifying, we don't know what's going on, lock everything down, shut it down. We now have all the data. Now, a lockdown, again, is detrimental. I just came back from South Africa 4 months ago, and they don't have the mechanism to distribute things like CERB to their populace because they don't have bank accounts. So, by which the mechanism to distribute CERB is existing in first world countries, which is convenient for these liberals because it continues a reliance on CERB. I had an employee leave my company, quit, have the audacity to then call me and say, by the way, can you fire me so I can collect CERB? That's the dark side. We understand that CERB was needed for the time being, no longer. Thank you.
Thank you, Anthony. And Leona.
There's no question that the social safety net is very important. One of our key Canadian values is that we don't want to leave anybody behind. And so therefore, when people fall on tough times, or as we found in COVID, in emergency situations, we want to make sure that those emergency benefits are there. However, the government still has a responsibility to make sure that the way that it's delivered goes to the people who actually need it. So what we really need to do is make sure that our programs are the right programs and they go to the people who need it, not who don't, and are commensurate with the times that they're in. Thank you.
Thank you, Leona. The next question is coming from the Markham Richmond Hill Vaughan Chinese Business Association, Ben Leon. Ben?
Hi, I'm a proud Canadian, and I'm proud Canadian living in this multicultural country, and we keep promote multiculturalism. And you can see about a year ago, there's Black Lives Matter, and later on, about another half years ago, there's Asian hatred. So a lot of disharmony things happen in our society. And we can see that there's people demand policing reform, and also we worry about security, gun control. So we'd like to see all these parties, how your party or yourself, to see how to reform our police. There's a need for policing reform, and how do you see the gun control, and how you can provide a more secure safety Canada for us to live.
Okay, so Secure Safety Canada, police reform, gun control were the themes. And the first to answer is Janice.
We need to confront racism. We thought we did it. It didn't work, right? So everybody's like not racist, but we are racist. We have an extremely racist country. I'm proud to be Canadian, but we have to look at where we have come from. And if we don't face racism, we're not going to end it. So stop saying you're not racist. I think racism is the N-word to white people. We're so afraid of being racist that we don't look in the face of racism and see that we are being racist, that we are excluding people, especially newcomers, to our communities. We want to dismantle all the right-wing extreme organizations, the hate groups. We have to do something about that. I mean, we were ignoring them, thinking that they were so stupid, nobody was listening to them, but you have to recognize how much power these groups have. We also need to collect race-based data in health and in policing and in employment. I'm sorry, it's time to do it in employment, because if we don't know where the problems are and we're just pretending that we don't see color, we're not going to solve any problems. We have to see where the problems are and fix them.
Thank you, Janice. Anthony?
It's a dark picture that Janice just painted for our country. As someone from the LGBT community, I don't want to live in this dark, divisive Canada that is being perpetrated by the left. It is absolutely insanity. Because at the end of the day, what is discrimination? Where do we end? As someone that is thankful to live in a country of freedom where I'm able to be gay, do you think you think you're able to be gay anywhere else in this world? I take offense to think that we're all racist. That is a bold statement, okay? Number one. Number two, Canadians are great people. And I think it's about time they stand up and say, I am not racist. I am not homophobic. I'm actually a great person who's inclusive of everyone around me. And I don't need to tell the government to continue to divide me and say, I'm not worthy of this country. Thank you.
Thank you, Anthony. Leona.
An important question, and one that we are facing head on. First and foremost, I agree that the tone of our leaders need to change. We are finding all the ways to divide us, whether it's east or west, whether it's rural or urban, whether it's French or English, whether it's religion, whether it's sexual orientation. Every conversation, it appears, where our leaders are talking about how we're not the same, we're not united, but rather different. That tone needs to start with the federal government to show us all the ways that we are united. But even more than that, we do have a problem with illegal guns in Canada. There's no question. And we need to do something about that. Increase money to the RCMP, increase to deal with it. Tracking and tracing of illegal guns will make us more secure and a more tolerant society. Thank you.
Thank you, Leona. The next question is being asked from the Richmond Hill Board of Trade, Cheryl Guinness. Cheryl?
Yes, I will go back to affordability for housing. And my question goes, echoing some of the concerns within the real estate industry, first-time ownership has always been a struggle. There is an argument that prices rose faster than wages. Therefore, we are in a crisis. In addition to home prices increasing significantly, home buyers must be qualified at 5.25 interest rate, even though the contract rate that the home buyer may receive is 1.99% or less. How will your party address the rising costs of home ownership and barriers to qualify for a mortgage for a new home owner or buyers?
Okay, Cheryl, thank you very much. The first candidate to answer is Anthony.
Thank you, Cheryl. Great question. It's a concern again to all millennials who can't get into this market. It's absolutely insane. And again, it comes down to the supply issue on the market. This is an economic issue. It comes with government bureaucracy in the supply. Each and every year, 400,000 Canadians are allowed in to immigrate here, which is great. We love immigration, builds our base. However, we don't have the homes, especially in the Aurora, Aurora Oak Ridges and Richmond Hill riding. We need to incite these developers to build these homes responsibly and taking into consideration the environment. But when it comes to building these developments, it shouldn't take 12 years to go through environmental regulations. I'm sorry, but that is absurd. And that is not radical in the slightest. We need to balance the environment, but we need to incentivize developers and these types of constructors to then build a supply so that the price of homes goes down because there's more on the market. And this reckless spending will only increase the cost of homes. So we need to stop it altogether. Thanks.
Thank you, Anthony. Next up is Leona.
There's a number of issues around affordable housing. First of all, as we've already discussed, the lack of supply. Absolutely. But the second thing is around wages and the security and quality of jobs. We have over 30% of our employed population who are precariously employed, meaning that they're contract workers or part-time without consistent hours, without consistent income. They can't get mortgages because they don't have that dependability to be able to present. So first of all, we need more housing, no question. We need more different types of housing, from high density to rental. And then we also need to address the other side, which is more stable and secure and quality jobs. Thank you.
Thank you, Leona. Janice?
I absolutely agree with Leona. I mean, that's exactly what we need. We need fair trade, because free trade ended up with all the good manufacturing jobs all left the country. So we can't just leave, as Anthony says, things up to the private sector to decide, because they will always go with the money, not with the people. And we need a balance on that. So the federal government needs to purchase and build low-income housing, because it's not fair to expect business owners and real estate experts to build that. They're working for profit, not to help everybody in society. Nobody in the private sector has that as their priority. I mean, sure, it's a nice thing to add on, but the government has to build the housing if we want affordable housing. We need rent relief. You can't get a place anywhere in York Region right now for under $2,200-$2,300 a month, and people are bidding up when they're going to rent. So you have to actually say you'll pay higher rent than the landlord's asking to, or you don't even get the space.
Thank you, Janice. Next question comes from the Rotary Club of Richmond Hill, Glenn Waugh. Glenn?
This is, I guess you would call it an Indigenous concern, but one of the questions that I received was about clean, safe drinking water. And the fact that it has been promised over and over by successive governments, and in particular for all you Indigenous communities, when will this happen? And what is your party plan to do to address this issue finally?
Sorry, trying to manage a few things here at the same time. Leona is up first, I believe.
Well, that is an excellent question. There simply is no excuse that any part of Canada should not have access to clean drinking water. The Conservatives will implement the recommendations of the Truth and Reconciliation, absolutely. But this is about holding government and government departments accountable. There is no excuse that we don't have clean water. We need to hold our elected officials and the government departments that they are entrusted to manage to do the job that we expect of them to the standard we expected. Thank you.
Thank you, Leona. And the next question is answered by Janice Hagan.
I think maybe what it's going to take is other countries like China to say they're not going to trade with us until we deal with our Indigenous genocide problem, right? So, I mean, we could do this if we wanted to do this. If we want to have clean drinking water and we make that a financial priority in this country, like we did CERB, like we did the crisis, we can afford to remove those drinking water advisories. They have existed for decades. This is not just a Liberal problem. This is a Liberal and a Conservative problem. We have to be ashamed of the way we have treated the people whose land we have taken. And it's time to put that as a #1 priority. All of the work has to be done with Indigenous people, not for them. So we have to work with the communities to build sustainable energy and drinking projects that employ people on the reserves in the communities and that are sustainable and lasting.
Thank you, Janice. Anthony?
Hi, so the PPC has a different future for Canada, and it revolves around coming together, sitting at a table, understanding one another, and coming to a solution. Because right now we have a problem with no one having an answer to this problem. It's just a constant problem. What is the solution? To keep on throwing money to the problem? No. All Canadians need to play the same game, whatever that may be. We need to have, whether it be reparations, whether it be land ownership, that the natives, we can have two different societies living side by side for the rest of perpetuity, because we will continue to have this problem. So whether it be reconciliation through acknowledgement through days, whether it be reparations to every single Native person, we need to sit down collectively and understand each other and say, after this day, we're moving forward as Canadian people. And no one has done that.
Thank you, Anthony. We have 2 more rounds of questions from our panelists, and then we'll be moving to questions that have been directed by the live audience. I have received those emails, by the way, Jason, thank you, or the email. So the next question will be asked by Yo-Yo Yan, and the first to answer will be Janice Hagan. Yo-Yo?
Oh, thank you. It's a question about economy. So are you concerned with the state of income and wealth equality in Canada? If so, what will be done by your party to create a stronger middle class? Thank you.
No, I'm not satisfied with economic justice in this country. You can see that the very rich are getting further and further away from the poor. We have very little middle class anymore. And that's going to be a problem because the middle class is what keeps the country and the economy going. The very rich can send their money to other countries where they don't have to pay taxes, and it can sit in a bank account, and it's not doing any good to our economy. So we want $10 a day daycare. Let's make it level the playing field for children and parents so that the workplace is fair. They've tried it in Quebec. It worked. It got more people in the workplace. They were paying more taxes. It paid for itself. We need sick days. You know, there's so many people spreading this disease because they can't stay home. So we need a livable living wage so people can participate in the culture. And then we need to make healthcare broader that people can rely on. That includes psychological help and dental and drugs.
Thank you, Janice. Anthony?
The larger the government, the more disparity there's going to be. I'm a student of economics. Janice is a student of an environment. So if I needed to, go to Janice for environmental advice, definitely. But the way economics trickles down, and that's a scary word, trickles down. It's not that. Leona worked for Bombardier. Correct me if I'm wrong. Bombardier. This is an example of how disparity is created, because these kinds of companies like Bombardier get these large government corporations, and now they can compete against the likes of Boeing unfairly, unjustly. And me and you, these entrepreneurs, can't compete. They build all these regulations with government's help, and they get those contracts based on those governments. So that depletes what it is to have an economic base that is very vibrant and diverse. We will get rid of those regulations to really ensure that the little guy has better help at it. But sorry, I'm losing my voice. But it's the large corporations and the large government that's creating the disparity. Thank you.
Thank you, Anthony. Leona?
Well, the best way to help the middle class and all Canadians is to make sure that we have mental health and healthy Canadians. So we're going to look at including mental health minimum standards in the Canada Health Act. Also, long-term care universal standards. We saw the challenges there. Canadians don't want to have to worry about their own health and those of their loved ones. We also need to have more quality jobs. We need to be able to look after ourselves in tough times. We need to increase domestic manufacturing and level the playing field for our domestic manufacturing capability against other countries that are not playing by the same rules. These are the things that will make us economically more viably, but also socially more healthy and more secure in our nation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Leona. The last panel question before we go to questions from the public comes from Ben Leon. Ben?
Hello. This question regarding the foreign policy. As what all candidates say, Canada is a big power, but looks like in the past 20 years, in the world stage, we don't have much presentation. We try to compete the United Nations Security Council place for twice, we lost. And we don't have many representatives in a world-class organization that's head or deputy head. So if your party become the government, what will you try to promote Canada globally? Let the world recognize our contribution as a mid-power.
Thank you, Ben. The first to answer that question is Janice Hagan.
I think we need to update the infrastructure for our military. That's a huge thing. It's been a lot of spending in that area. We need to, carry our weight when we're being sent to other countries. We need to have a better mandate, and I think we need to rethink that mandate. The days of the black hats versus the white hats are over. The world is extremely complex. It's not easy to just take a side anymore. And I think Canada did best when we were known as peacekeepers, not people following, the American president and getting into whatever war they wanted to get in without thinking for ourselves. And I think we need to look at fairness and justice in the world, and try and do our best creatively to find solutions other than war and military action to try and help people that need help.
Thank you, Janice. Anthony?
Ben, great question. Let's work backwards from that question. So the biggest powers right now are both China and the United States. What makes them alluring? They're business friendly. People want to go there and work and invest their hard-earned money to really establish what it means to be a Canadian corporation. No one wants to come to Canada right now because you have high taxation for the corporation, high income tax. As an individual, when I'm making $100,000 here in Ontario, why would I do that when I can go to a state like Delaware, where it's closer to zero for a corporation? Doesn't make sense fiscally. And so you are stifling innovation. You're stifling innovation in healthcare. You're stifling innovation in all sectors, because that is the basis of innovation, to enable people to come with foreign direct investment so that they can enable these companies, then hire these people to do phenomenal jobs and have great careers and really have purpose in what they're doing here in Canada. And that's how we'll be a superpower. Thank you.
Thank you, Anthony. And Leona?
This is a very important question. The world has changed and we must change with it. Canada has never been more alone. When Obama came to speak to the House of Commons, I had the privilege of being in the House of Commons during that speech. And one of the key things he said is that the world needs more Canada. Now, the Liberals interpreted that as Canada's fantastic, and so we need to do more. When in fact, I have sat on Defense Committee, I've sat on our Foreign Affairs Committee, I am a member of the NATO Parliamentary Assembly. I have talked to our allies and partners, and they are asking us to step up. That is what they meant by the world needs more Canada. They need us to step up from a defense and security perspective, from a political and diplomatic perspective, and from a trading perspective. We need to be present, we need to stand with our allies, and we need to be committed to the things that we say we are committed, because actions speak louder than words.
Thank you, Leona. So that ends the panel questions, and we have an array of questions from the floor. The first one is actually a really quick, no one will need to use a full minute on this one here, but and many of these questions have not come up tonight, and so we'll they might be somewhat different themes. So the first one's very simple, and the first, let's see where we ended up there. So the next answer will be Cheryl. Will have the, pardon me, will be Anthony. We'll have the first opportunity to answer questions. First question is, please give a brief answer to the question. Do you live in the Aurora, Oak Ridges, Richmond Hill riding?
I do not. I am actually from Manhattan. I just came back. I have a company. Why I came back was to run into the election. I contacted the PPC and I said, I love Canada. I really do. I see it going in a very dismal direction. For anyone that's on the call that's from a communist country, this is the beginning of how this ends up into the communist country. And you see Janice shaking her head, but everything she's indicated is really leading that way. So why I came back to join is because I commit to everyone that's listening to the audience, I will move to the region. I'm currently in Caledon, Ontario, where I grew up at my family home. And that's my answer.
Thank you, Anthony. And next to answer is Leona.
I've had the privilege of working or living in almost every province across this country, but my husband and I, over 15 years ago, chose to move our family to Oak Ridges. So yes, we do, and we're very privileged and honored to be able to be part of this community. Thank you.
Thank you, Leona. And obviously Janice is the last to answer this question.
I lived in Oak Ridges for a couple of years. I now live in Markham. But we used to all be one riding, so I'm still hanging around. And I do have a lot of family lives in Richmond Hill. I represent workers in Richmond Hill, and I spend a lot of time. So.
Thank you, Janice. Little context with each of the answers there, which is great. This next question, yeah, I don't think let me find the right question. Here it is. How will your party improve the well-being of seniors and particularly protect seniors from elder abuse? So this is more of a general question, but a good one. And I'm going to direct the first to answer the question, I believe, is Leona.
Well, that's a very important question. And part of the reason we have universal healthcare and the Canada Health Act is because we as Canadians believe that there has to be a minimum universal standard for care, no matter what province you live in across Canada. We've seen during COVID that there's a significant issue with long-term care and seniors, and the Conservatives will put a minimum standard into the Canada Health Act to ensure that this doesn't happen again. And my sincere apologies, but I have an urgent situation that I need to attend to. And so it has been a privilege to be part of this evening. And I wish all of you the very best, and thank you to all the organizers, but I will need to leave. This election is about very important things, and I would be honored to continue to serve as your member of parliament. Thank you.
Thank you, Leona. And Janice, did you get an opportunity in this? Not yet.
No, we do have an extensive seniors policy. We want to deal with isolation, which I think is very much related to abuse. More social programs. I love the idea of childcare and senior homes put together, because it's great for the children to have seniors around to give them context in life, and it's great for seniors to have young people around. So we need to find creative ways. We want to completely end privatized home care and privatize long-term care facilities. It's not something that should be based on how much profit you can make. We need to have minimal standards. I hear horror stories. I've been in homes, people staring at walls, rations of diapers. It's really difficult for the healthcare workers, and it's really difficult for the residents. We need to raise the wages so we can keep good nurses and good healthcare professionals in the system, and treat our elders with respect.
Thank you, Janice. The next question is.
I didn't get a chance to respond to the question, Rod.
Sorry, I didn't. I apologize, Anthony. Go ahead.
No worries. Thank you. Great question. My perspective and the PPC's perspective on this is the accountability factor. There should be absolutely no one should be put through what seniors are being put through from any sort of legal standpoint. We need to have stringent laws for repercussions on why these seniors are being abused in the first place. What is the actual crime sentence for this disgusting act being taken care of these people that have lived here and contributed to Canadian society for their entire lives? It's absurd. And it comes down to accountability. And all of it comes down to accountability. Why is there no accountability in these government programs? Why aren't these people being brought through the law to hold them accountable to this crime that is abuse to these elders? The solution is more contributions to the private sector, options that it will be delivered through our PPC model to ensure that elders have the right to pick and choose where they want to go to. Thank you.
Thank you, Anthony. Next question is as follows. How will you and your party encourage evidence-based thinking in Canada so that we reduce mistrust in science and the free press? Anthony is first up.
Well, that's a loaded question. I think we're living in a time of misinformation, and I encourage, this is a tough one. This is a very, very tough one. And I think that this is the crux of why I'm here. I think that where we're at is we have mistrust based on a number of different factors. Social media regulations. We have large media telling us one thing, and we have individuals telling us another. Do I believe that? Do I have the answer to this question? Absolutely not. I'm not going to pretend to be here because I would be Mark Zuckerberg if I did. But the answer to this is I encourage everyone to choose freedom of thought, because at the end of the day, having one bureaucratic body tell us what is true or not is worse off than misinformation, because that leads to a draconian authoritarian regime, the likes of which we won't see. And that's not saying lightly. So I'd rather the misinformation, so long as people are diligent in doing their research. Sorry, thank you.
Thanks, Anthony. You've been pretty good at it stopping, actually. So, but that was great. Thank you. And Janice?
Information is not the same thing as science. Okay, science is diligent. There's such a thing as peer review. So I do a study, I develop some new information, and then I invite my peers to criticize that and find all the things wrong with it. We need to explain that. You know, people's opinions on the internet is not science. If you look at a lot of these anti-vax sites, they are also anti-gay and lesbian extremism, anti-Muslim radicalization. You know, they're not just anti-vaccine, and we have to be really careful. I used to also believe in complete freedom of thought. I love the internet, but I think we are starting to see, like within the revolution in the American state last January, and you know, this whole vaccine issue we have right now, that we can't give equal time everywhere to people just for information. We need to understand science. We need to make it mandatory in school. And I think our Canadian health system needs to do more public information.
Thank you, Janice. This next question, as you're listening to it, you're going to think it's like a mortgage affordability housing question, but it's not. So just listen carefully. What will your party do to provide homeowners, building owners, and businesses with tax incentives, financing at low interest loans, and grants to retrofit existing buildings in order to reduce greenhouse gases? And I think Janice is first up. Is that right?
Yes, absolutely. Will be one of our plans, and to actually create jobs in that area to do, you know, more infrastructure. A lot of people don't know, but the buildings, large buildings, actually put out more carbon into the environment than cars. It's a huge issue. Toronto's done a lot of work on this in their school system, and they've created good jobs for the community. You know, making sure that people who live in the areas of these buildings are getting those jobs, and it's a diverse workforce. So it's a very beautiful sort of system of creating good jobs, but also eliminating a lot of emissions. So I'm absolutely for that. And even if you don't believe in science and you don't believe in climate change, it's still good to save on your hydro and your gas bills. So we need to do that.
Thank you, Anthony.
Hi, Canada has one of the leading forefronts in environmental regulations, led through the LEED Sustainability Platform Act. That, you know, building buildings with Ellis Dawn and going through that is quite a rigorous process. No one's saying we don't believe in science. No one's saying that we don't believe in a better Canadian future. What we're saying is we need to restore balance to radicalism. Right now, we can't build homes in your region because it takes 12 years to get a permit. No one's saying that we don't need to protect the environment. We love the environment. Everyone loves the environment. We need homes. We need affordable homes now. And the only way to address this issue is to reduce the barriers to entry at which people can build these homes, because the government cannot redistribute the funds to ensure that everyone can live affordably. Only the private sector can do that.
Thank you, Anthony. This question is, why are, so just by the way, we're about 1 or 2 questions from the end of this section, and then we'll move to closing statements from the 2 remaining candidates, and then wrap up. This question is, why are sporting goods stores allowed to continue to advertise rifles and handguns? The questioner believes that such ads glorify killing and market to youth. And I think Anthony's up first.
So you know, gun safety regulations should be in place. We have gun safety regulations, and I would like to reiterate that we have one of the most stringent gun safety regulations in the entire world. Now, why people have guns? For recreational reasons, for hunting. People hunt in Ontario. They enjoy it. People eat meat, and they can do that safely, and they can do that as a sport. So to acknowledge that these people don't exist is absurd. And to acknowledge that the problem is guns itself is not where we're coming from. People and stringent laws should be put in place and punishment for people that use the guns, like they would use a knife, like they do in Australia now where there's no guns, to kill people. Okay, so there's weapons out there. Now, to take away these weapons would be a misleading. People can't see the draconian downside to an authoritarian country. We're seeing it now with these big governments, but at the end of the day, who's going to protect people if we have a tyrant in place like Justin Trudeau? Thank you.
Janice?
Kind of scared if you need a gun for Justin Trudeau right now, but you know, I think that cigarettes went down in use when we stopped allowing them to be advertised. And I think guns are also a danger like cigarettes. And I think the questioner makes a really good point. Why do we allow this advertising? It's not something I'd considered before, but I do notice that you get your gun stores, you know, in the right neighborhoods. It's not very helpful. So yeah, I think we should take a more mature look at advertising for guns in sports stores and compare it to cigarettes and make some of the same, you know, some of the same rules about doing it at sporting events, how it's shown. I mean, if you watch old movies, you see everybody is smoking, right? Like it just everywhere, and they cut that out and smoking went down. So I think that is a really good idea.
Thank you, Janice. Yeah, it was a good question. Last question from the public, and we've heard about affordable housing, but what about supportive housing for the homeless? If there is anything that we should have learned through COVID, is that everyone needs a home. So I believe Janice is first up. If I'm wrong, then you can speak up.
All right, so I did have my own business once. I used to sell t-shirts on Yonge Street, and I know you guys won't consider that a real business, but I spent a lot of time on the street hanging out with homeless people. And I'm a chatty person, so I would sit down respectfully and talk to them. And I have to say that, you know, there are shelters, there is help, but there's also a lot of mental health issues. And I've heard people that, you know, got beaten up in shelters, had really hard time, that there's, you know, a lot of bullying and harassment going on. So I think the primary thing we need to do is to build a mental health system that everyone has access to. I mean, how do you get your teenager help if it's going to cost $90 an appointment and you don't have enough money for that? And maybe you need to pay for drugs that you can't pay for. So I think if we can improve our mental health supports in our society for everyone, not just the wealthy, I think we could end homeless a lot faster.
Thank you, Janice. Anthony?
I agree with Janice in a couple ways. I agree with her when she says that we need to protect people that have mental illness, and we need to ensure that there's some baseline for these individuals. We need to have, you know, a strategy around what is that baseline, because and work from there. Not the entire population is requiring a home. We don't want the government to mandate homes. There is a base of society that does need help for these homes. We need to decide what that base is. Then from there, it's a supply issue. And I'll reiterate again, the more homes we have, the cheaper it will be. The more homes we have, the cheaper it will be in every dimension, from rent to ownership. And this is the thing we need to look at, because if not, this is an unattainable asset for the wealthy, and we can't have that.
Thank you, Anthony. So we're now moving to the closing statements, and Anthony, you're actually first up based on the order, and then obviously Janice will be next. You have 2 minutes. You don't have to use all of it, but this is your opportunity to close with your final message, and away you go, Anthony.
I'd like to first thank the Richmond Hill Board of Trade for having me and the PPC party. I'd like to thank the entire region for having me as their PPC candidate. I am completely honored to be your candidate here in this contentious and really an election unlike any other. I think what we've seen in the past 18 months has been a Canada that I don't recognize any longer. I really don't. From an economic, from a social, from an endless war on culture, where we are considered complete victims, complete necessity, reliance on a government that won't commit to ending lockdowns anytime soon, that wants to implement a social credit system indefinitely. People I ask on this call, if you are from Persia, Iran, if you're from Hong Kong, if you're from the former Yugoslavian Republic, if you're from Russia, if you're from Ukraine, I ask you to talk to your neighbors and educate them on what is being perpetrated right now. Where does this end? Because in my opinion, it doesn't end well. And the solution comes from the only conservative party left, the People's Party of Canada. We are here to support you, but we're here to ensure that you have the opportunity to create a strong business, to create a strong family, to create a strong future for your Canadian dream. Because there's no other party that's going to do that for you on this call. It's only the People's Party of Canada, the true conservative party. We will hold to our mandate, and we will ensure that Canada is restored to its greatness. Because right now, I cannot recognize it. Thank you.
Thank you, Anthony. Ciscos from the People's Party of Canada, and Janice Hagan for your final closing.
I want to thank everybody for coming tonight. It's really important to get to know the candidates and not just vote for a party. So I hope you will consider me. I'm a farmer's daughter from Southwestern Ontario, 57 years old. I have 3 adult children. Sounds like an oxymoron, but I'm married to an environmentalist who has won awards in our town for bringing back frogs, and we spend our time outside working on the waterways for free. You know, I don't trust the private sector to do everything for us. I don't think that that's their job. I think that as a community, we have to do things from the government, and I think we really need to make sure everyone in our community has a level-based playing field, you know, mental health supports, pharmaceutical drugs when they need them, and just a clean future where we can reduce emissions, have green energy, have good jobs. If we work together, we can do these things. The private sector is important. I am not a communist. We definitely need business, and people should be able to build their wealth, but we need basic minimums to keep this country going for another 8 or 10 generations or even more. That's the difference. We can't just trust for that to happen mysteriously while people are trying to get rich. If that did happen in real estate, for example, we wouldn't be ripping down 2 small houses and building a monster home. You know, that is not helping with affordable housing. We have to put some controls in. We have to have really comprehensive, fair tax changes so that the people making the most wealth are paying their share.
Thank you so much, Janice. I would like to thank all the candidates for attending this evening, and particularly Janice and Anthony for sticking it out to the bitter end, and all of your efforts. I mean, your passion, I think, shone through. You can see where people's interests are and what they're passionate about, certainly representing your parties and your platform. So we want to thank you for your time and participating in the event this evening. So again, that's Anthony Siskos from the People's Party of Canada, Jenna Sagan from the New Democratic Party, and Leona Alaslav from the Conservative Party of Canada, and Leah Taylor-Roy from the Liberal Party of Canada. In addition, I would like to thank all our sponsor, TREB, Toronto Regional Real Estate, Regional Real Estate Board, I believe, and for sponsoring our event, which helps us with some of our costs and putting this on Zoom as a webinar. And then our sponsoring organizers in the event, the Glenois from the panelists, Glenois representing the Rotary Richmond Hill, and Rotary Club of Richmond Hill, and Ben Leung from the Markham Richmond Hill Vaughan Chinese Business Association, Yo-Yo Yan from the Richmond Hill Liberal and YorkRegion.com, also Metroland Media, and finally, Cheryl Guinness from the Richmond Hill Board of Trade. And lastly, but not least, many volunteers behind the scenes. Some of them you see on the screen here. Jason Cherniak helping out with some of the managing the questions from the floor. Lucy Chen was our timer this evening, and Lisa Chong, who you don't see visually, was sort of the producer of the event behind the scenes and did a great job. And of course, our executive director of the Richmond Board of Trade, Monique Dennison. There are other volunteers from the different organizations, and my apologies for not having them in front of me on a list. I'm sort of winging the last part of this event here. So thank you all for your time, and we wish you a good evening. Please vote. Thank you.